Hello and welcome to Hug and the Snug, where today I am joined by Hanane Taidi, who is the Communications Director at Plastics Europe. Hanane, Hug and the Snug by name, Hug and the Snug by nature. Can we have a hug?
Of course, my pleasure.
So we're going to come on to some bigger questions, but just to bring our viewers up to speed, can you give me a very kind of quick and concise definition of what Plastics Europe is all about?
Plastics Europe is the Association of Plastics Manufacturers. So we represent, we are the voice of the plastics producers in Europe. Our members include basically companies such as Biomaterial Science, or Solvay, or BASF, so basically the petrochemical industry in Europe. We are headquarters in Brussels, but we have representation offices all over Europe. So basically, in a nutshell, that's Plastics Europe organization.
And one of the things that really caught my attention about Plastics Europe was that you, in 2010, I believe, made a pledge, if you like, for achieving zero plastics to landfill by 2020, which I find an astonishingly ambitious target. Given that you, as you say, represent the plastics manufacturers, was this a target that the motivation came from your members?
To a certain extent, although it does sound surprising actually, yes, and the reason is very simple, because our industry sees the plastics waste or rubbish as a resource. We actually do not see it as something to be wasted. It is way too valuable to be buried in landfills. Bear in mind that, for example, today in Europe, still roughly 40% of the plastics waste that's generated from household still goes into landfills. And that represents currently roughly €1 million. And in the current economic circumstances, I don't think that we can afford to have that money running away or being buried. Hence the call for action to policymakers and to other players in the recycling or the energy from waste or waste management companies to help us achieve this target of zero plastics to landfill by 2020. Actually, if you look at other countries such as Germany or Norway or Belgium, this is not such a crazy objective. They have already achieved it. They have less than 10% of the plastics or high calorific value waste that goes into landfill. In Germany today, you have up to 25% recycling. The rest is energy recovery. And what is realistically an objective that we can look at is reaching a 50% recycling from now to 2020. We still need, of course, a mix of energy from waste at this stage to be able to reach the zero plastics to landfill by 2020. But the technology is there, the infrastructure is somehow available in some parts of Europe more than others, but there must be clever ways if we bring in all the value chain together, and that's the role that Plastics Europe basically is playing, is we want to act as a catalyst to get the other players to be motivated to see the value of exploiting rubbish into a resource and making it come into a circular economy.
Okay, so I understand that there's a clear commercial driver.
Yeah.
As you say, the technologies are there. We do have the solutions, and there are several countries where this is already almost a reality. But is it fair to say that there's still going to be a wholesale shift and reinvention within the plastics industry to achieve this? Because in some ways it feels a little bit like the fast food industry trying to tackle obesity. At face value it seems to be very much not in the industry, the best interest of the industry. You've mentioned some of the reasons why, in fact, it is over the long term, but what is that actually going to mean in practice for your members in terms of the kind of innovation that they may have to go through?
Well, I think for our industry, the main point is related as well to the image of the material. I mean, the industry has been putting loads of efforts, and since the invention of the material, actually, you see so much money going into research and development, and we, from an internal perspective, we look at it as an awesome piece of engineering, a scientific achievement, fantastic chemistry behind. But when you match that with the external perspective, and in the external view in plastics, you see it very much associated to a cheap material. And our industry has everything to gain into repositioning the material into that wonder invention of the times of Leo Baekeland. That's the pioneer, a pioneer in science that's behind the plastics. So therefore, we really want to position plastics as a resource and don't have it called rubbish. There is no such thing as plastic rubbish. It is just a resource. It's full of energy and it could be exploited throughout its life cycle. That's what's in it for our industry, is really to get back the image that the material deserves. It has enabled so much innovation. Just look at any field. Look at the automotive industry. I mean, would you be able to have lighter cars today, consuming less, emitting less energies, with so much electronic equipment inside? The safety features that you have in an automotive, in a vehicle, if it was not for plastics. Electric and electronics, all the devices that we have today, the smartphones, the LCD screens and all the rest of it, where would that be without plastic? Medical field, look at all the breakthrough in medicine. Plastics, aerospace, you have today planes that basically the Dreamliner that contains up to 50% of plastics material, that has helped reduce by 25% its consumption of kerosene. That's plastics. So it's a material that is a key driver and a key enabler of innovation. Our industry is a key economic player in Europe. We are providing over 1.5 million jobs in Europe with a turnover of 300 billion euros a year. So I think they do deserve a bit more than a cheap material that trend.
Yes, and you're talking about a sort of return to the miracle material image that plastics originally had. And I'm interested in what else needs to be done to help the consumer shift their perspective, because whilst all those things those examples that you gave are true, I think there's a long way for consumers to, at the moment we get our groceries in a plastic bag that we may reuse or we may just chuck away. A lot of our food is unpacked. All of that we're just used to thinking of, that's just okay, we needed it to get here to me and now we just get rid of it. And even with all the technologies and processes in place to make sure that plastics is a resource rather than waste, will there not have to be a corresponding shift in consumer perspective away from seeing it as a waste product? Because at the moment nobody has all their empty packaging and goes, okay, this is a resource.
I fully agree with you there, and it is true, it is really a challenge for us. Because we are an industry that's not necessarily oriented towards communicating to the consumers. We do more B2B communications. But it's again working along the value chain, working with the retailers to get that information through to the consumers, and to bring people to understand first why there are products on the markets. What's the point in having a cucumber that's wrapped? And that's one thing. Exactly. You go to your supermarket and you've got one cucumber that's wrapped in plastic. If I was not from the industry, I would be going for the other choice. Why do I need that piece of plastics around my cucumber? I'm getting for the non-wrapped one because it's more environmentally sustainable. But it all depends actually on your lifestyle. If you're someone like me who hates the burden of shopping, and you go to your supermarket, I go once every 2 weeks, and then stock up on food and all the rest of it, put it into my fridge. I would want food that lasts a bit longer. So I know that a cucumber would last roughly 3 days. So if it's wrapped with that 1 gram of plastics, that cucumber is going to last me 14 days in my fridge. So that's the difference. That's why there is that 1 gram of plastics wrapping that cucumber. So when you think of all the energy and water that has gone into producing that cucumber, and you think that with 1 gram of that material, you're extending its shelf life, what that represents for the retailer themselves, for their storage, and for the consumer, that you can keep your good longer in your fridge. That's the one thing. So here we need the retailers to help us bring that information along to the consumers, because they have their direct contact with them. And there are examples like Marks Spencer's. They've done a great job communicating about their sustainability plan, Plan A. And there is a lot of information there. There are supermarkets in France, like Leclerc. They have also developed communication oriented towards consumers, where they're bringing these messages. But indeed, a lot needs still to be done, and that's cooperation between us and the value chain to bring that message to the consumers.
Okay. And so, a final question: what do you think? And quite briefly, if you will, but it seems to me that you are quite an enlightened association that's really helping your industry to look forward to the future and really respond early to the challenges that are coming. What do you think other industries can learn from what you're doing?
I don't think that we have anything to be teaching. I don't want to be like teaching any other
maybe be inspired by this.
I think that we need really to embrace the future and look at it from the 3 Ps, from planet, profit, and people. I believe that any business model needs to be developed around these 3 pillars, not only for today, but for sake of a long-term thinking strategy. We need courage and we need leadership to make sure that Europe remains competitive in a global world.
Courage and leadership.
Absolutely.
Good words. Thank you very much.
Thank you.